About a year ago, I saw this article. I think the headline on the linking page was something like how to improve your maths results. And looking at this immediately, what struck me was number 3. Prioritise curriculum coherence and connections. Now, I also teach a bit of maths, and that's something I've always tried to do in maths. And it's quite easy in that case because you can introduce, something like a fraction, and then you could say, well, pie charts, they're just a fraction of a circle, and probability is just a fraction of the time things happen, so it's easy to see the connections. Back in the days of ICT, it was a little bit more tricky because it was a bit of a random selection of, today we're reviewing this website, but tomorrow we're going to make a spreadsheet. But one of the things that struck me straight away when we switched to computing is how the topics are linked, and it's easy to do that retrieval practice at the start of the lesson just by revising the things that the current topic links to, particularly things like representation and how the hardware stores those things with its 2 states and so on. So I suggested in my role as lead teacher, I suggested to our teacher team last year that actually maybe this should be one of our kind of appraisal targets that we share. So I didn't think anything more about that. And then I went to the NCCE Big Leadership Computing Conference in Oxford last December. And one of the sessions there, Tig Williams asked the assembled people how many topics they thought there were in Key Stage 3 computing. And I was wondering whether I thought there were maybe 4, 5, that sort of order. And asking around the room, it turned out that people thought there were possibly 18 or even more, up to 30 different topics within Key Stage 3 computing, which is interesting, isn't it? Because there's only 9 bullet points in the national curriculum. So people were separating them out, whereas I'd been combining them. And actually, you can find it quite useful if you think about those connections between the different topics and actually realise that things are all the same. And then one week last autumn, I also found myself teaching essentially the same thing in 3 different lessons. We were doing colour depth, how many colours you can represent with a certain number of bits, and then we were doing truth tables in a different lesson. Then there's a third thing I can't quite remember, and I suddenly thought, actually, they're all the same, aren't they? So that is what led me to create the combinations lesson, which is the next video. So if you're interested in that idea of how many topics there are in Key Stage 3 computing, I've written this blog on it here, which you can see. It includes that target 3 from the CEM Mastery webpage, although there is a link to that. So I'll put a link to this in the description of this video. And next up, we'll have a look at combinations, and then also the number of places that true and false appear in the curriculum, and how you can take advantage of those properties and how they relate to some of the other things such as representation.